I heard my future in a whisper. We'll kick him out after Christmas. And the cinnamon in my hand suddenly tasted like rust. The oven timer dinged, the sound a polite little bell to escort me out of my own life. I didn't move. I watched the red light on the stove blink down from 30 to 29, while Mara's voice floated from the hallway like perfume you don't want to breathe. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. The turkey hissed at 50 Kansas City light, cold and thin. Even at noon on December 18th, sank across the counter and settled on the $2,847 mortgage statement I'd paid that morning. My name at the top, the trust name below, the due date circled in blue ink. I'd circled it myself, the way a man circles his own birthday to remember he's still here. Irvin murmured something soft back to Mara, a sound like he was apologizing into a coat sleeve. He didn't deny it. He didn't say, "Don't talk about my father that way." He said nothing that mattered, which in families counts as agreement. I slid the mortgage statement into my shirt pocket, where I keep receipts I'm not ready to argue with. The oven timer reached 0 and sang again, cheerful and dumb. I twisted the knob, cracked the door to bleed heat, and left the cinnamon open on the counter so the whole kitchen could smell like the Christmas I was no longer invited to. The house had the sounds I know. Furnace breathing, wood tick-ticking as it adjusts to winter, the faint hum of the old refrigerator I'd nursed through 2 compressors. My wife's photo watched from the mantel. Blue dress, County Fair 1998, looking like she knew about whispers before I did. "We'll kick him out after Christmas," Mara had said into her phone, thinking the ding of the timer made a curtain. She always was confident about curtains. How to stage a room for a sale, how to hide a truth with a throw blanket and a smile. I wiped the edge of the roasting pan, my knuckles white, and stepped onto the porch to let the cold slap me back to useful. Across the street, Mrs. Alvarez swept salt off her steps with short, fast strokes like she was scrubbing winter itself. "Snow by Friday," she called. "Wouldn't surprise me," I said, which was the safest thing to say when you could taste a different kind of weather moving in. My phone buzzed against my palm, 2 things at once. A notification from my bank confirming the automatic draft for the mortgage, and then a voicemail banner from an unknown number that was probably someone trying to sell me a new roof. I opened the bank message first, watched the $2,147 subtract itself from my pension deposit, and felt the strangest sense of calm. Money leaving can be a kind of clarity. Inside, I found Evan in the hallway, pretending to be very busy with a bundle of Christmas lights. "Mara wants to do white this year," he said. "Clean look, minimal." His voice had no place to land. "White's fine," I said. "Clean is good." I let the silence stretch long enough for him to remember the kinds of sentences men ought to say to other men when their wives overstep. He chose the wrong ones. "Dad, you know we've been talking about space. The house is getting cramped." He lifted the lights, the green wire like a question mark that might choke him if it got brave. "The house has the same rooms it had last winter," I said. "Only difference is the words in it," he flushed. "Can we not do this now? It's Christmas." "Exactly," I said, and took the cinnamon jar from the counter like a man who cares about small jobs in a room where large ones are drowning. At 2:43 p.m., the neighbor's Ring camera caught Mara on their porch, framed in winter light, speaking into her phone. I didn't know that yet. I would know it in a day when Mrs. Alvarez tugged me by the sleeve and said, "I thought you should see what my door heard." But I knew enough now. I knew the tone. I knew the way ambition can make people mean and call it practical. I set the dining table the way my wife taught me. Forks out, knives in, napkins folded into little tents. When there's a storm, do a ritual. That way the storm has to knock. I placed the November 15th property tax receipt under the salt shaker. Not to show off, to have a truth within reach of anyone who wanted to look. I slid the Deck 3 furnace invoice, $1,020, under the pepper mill. I put the 2018 trust binder in the chair I always sit in, a heavy guest with my name on the spine. I didn't plan a fight. I planned to be ready when someone insisted on one, Pie crust, Evan said, holding up the shopping list like a shield. 2, I said. The cheap kind. They bake up the same. He nodded, relieved, and kissed the air around my shoulder the way people do when they are trying to be decent and not managing it. When he left, the house heard a car door close, and then for a moment nothing. Grief came sneaking. It always does. I let it sit on the bottom stair, where the carpet is worn to the color of old tea, and cried once, fast and quiet, because crying can be a kind of wayfinding. My wife's photo kept looking at me like she knew I wouldn't stay there. She married a lineman. We climbed things to fix them. I washed my face with cold water and dialed a number I keep in my wallet, Ruth Daly, the attorney who walked us through the trust when my wife's breath began to come in halves. Ruth, I said to her voicemail, it's me. I need to ask you a question about Article 4, and I need a notary tomorrow if you can get one. I don't want to fight. I want to be clean. It took 3 minutes for her to call back. You still have the binder? She asked. It hasn't left the house, I said. Good, she said. Bring it in the morning. We'll read it like it's the Bible, and you're the only apostle left. Can you come 9 sharp? I'll be early, I said. Bring any proof of expenses you've carried, she said. Receipts matter not because they're paper, but because they show care. I looked at the salt and pepper, the little glass domes sheltering the life I've kept going, and said, I've got proof in piles. When you know you are about to defend your ground, you start walking differently on it. I changed the bulb in the hallway that flickered when the dishwasher hit rinse, swapped in a fresh LED from the pack I bought at Ace in October. I wiped the handprints off the stair rail, my own among them. I lifted the brown cardboard box marked Xmas, front room, and found the ornament our granddaughter made. A red popsicle stick house with glitter stuck in the glue like tiny promises. I set it on the mantel beside my wife. The house can witness a lot. It doesn't have to testify. At 4:10 p.m., Mara floated into the kitchen with a practiced sigh. It smells like a magazine, she said, meaning the lemon oil and roasted thyme. We could get great photos in here. For what? I asked, though I already knew. Content, she said, smiling a smile that lives most of its life on a screen. People love holiday kitchens. People love homes that don't lie to them, I said, and adjusted the oven rack, which stuck unless you lifted just right. She tapped her phone. Anyway, Evan said you'd grab pie crusts. I will, I said. And something else. What else? She said. Just something I forgot, I said, and took my car keys from the hook labeled Dad that my granddaughter painted last year with a crooked heart for the AI. Went to Mildred's coffee house first because coffee helps a man singe doubt at the edges. Cal was there, of course, like men who have changed jobs, but not instincts. He doesn't wear a hard hat anymore. He wears a denim jacket with a realtor pin that looks like a nail head. You still climb things for a living? I asked. Stairs instead of poles, he said. Less wind, more perfume. I might have something for you, I said. I thought you might, he said back. Because some friendships are like old trucks. They start on the first turn, even if you haven't driven them in months. We didn't make a plan there. We made a promise to talk tomorrow after I saw Ruth. Cal knows this street, these comps, the exact way Winterlight gets into a listing photo and makes wood floors look honest. I left him with a handshake that had weight in it and bought 2 pie crusts and a small notary stamp kit because the UPS store was sold out, and the clerk said Ruth's office might appreciate the extra in a pinch. $23 and change. I tucked the receipt in the breast pocket with the mortgage statement, paper on paper, proof rubbing proof like flint. Back home, I labeled a manila folder December, trust actions in black marker, and fed it with what would become my defense. The $2,147 proof, the $1,120 furnace invoice, the NAV 15 tax receipt, a printout of my wife's original trust signature page from 2018. I took a photo of each with my phone, not for drama, but because you back up the things you don't plan to lose. When the house settled that night and Evan's footsteps went quiet at the end of the hall, I eased into my recliner, the leather cold through my sweater. The ceiling fan did its slow winter crawl. I looked at the doorway to the room that used to be our den and imagined a clean white condo near Luce Park. Quiet, one bedroom, a window that receives morning like it's a guest. I'm not a man who fantasizes about moving. I'm a man who knows the difference between living in a house and being allowed to. The trust didn't give me power I didn't already have. It reminded me I didn't have to beg for what I'd built. I set the phone alarm for 7 a.m., scribbled 3 lines on a yellow pad. Deck 18, whisper. Deck 19, Ruth. Deck 21, 22, photos. The pencil lead snapped on the last period. I sharpened it and underlined the dates like a road I was willing to walk in the cold. Then I turned off the lamp and let the dark come all the way in, the way you let a truth arrive so you can see it plain in the morning. I didn't sleep so much as hover above the recliner like a ghost with a bad back. The leather held the shape of my worry. Kansas City does a particular kind of winter night where the furnace kicks on and you feel both grateful and accused. Grateful for the heat, accused of needing it. At 5:12 a.m. the coffee maker hissed like a snake, deciding whether I was prey or kin. I watched the dark outside my window and made a deal with myself. Cry once, work twice. The house knew my morning routine by heart. The hallway nightlight blinked me past the framed Union photo. Me and Cal on a pole in 1989, cheeks wind-burned, hands raw and proud. I set the mug beside the 2018 trust binder, the brown leather exactly where I'd left it on the dining chair. My wife's tabs were still there. Yellow for articles, blue for exhibits, pink for signatures. She'd labeled Article 4 in her neat librarian hand, Trustee Powers. I opened it and read the line Ruth had read to us when we signed. The trustee may sell, convey or otherwise dispose of trust property for the benefit of the settler. I traced the sentence with my finger like a child, reading out loud to a parent who already knows the story. I am the settler. The law didn't love me, but it recognized me. Still, grief pitched a tent. It always asks for more ground than you give it. I let it have the bottom stair for a minute, and then I folded it in half and slid it under the table with the other things that weren't going to get a vote. I took out the November 15th Jackson County tax receipt and read the stamp paid like it was my name. I underlined the date with a dull pencil. I stacked the Deck 3 furnace invoice, $1,120 paid via check no 2283, on top. Then the $2,847 mortgage statement with the blue circle I'd drawn yesterday. Paper is heavy in the way truth is heavy. 1 page at a time, you feel it. I wanted to barge into Evan's room and wake him up the way I used to for fishing. Up, son, the light's waiting. Instead, I wrote him a note. Breakfast in the pan. Coffee's on. I'll be out after 9. Love, Dad. I put the note on the stove where heat turns paper curls into small prayers. On the counter, I set the yellow pad where I'd written my plan. Deck 18, whisper. Deck 19, Ruth. Deck 21, 22, photos. Deck 24, dinner. Deck 26, list. The pencil point snapped again, meaner this time. I sharpened it with a paring knife because sometimes you need a blade to make a line clean. When you are treated like a burden in your own house, everything becomes a test of whether you still belong. I opened the fridge and counted the eggs, 7, the way an unwelcome guest would. I cooked 2 with a pinch of salt and a twist of pepper from the mill that wobbles near empty. I left the rest for the people who think I'm taking up space. I ate standing up, listening to the radiator knock twice, pause, and knock once more, the same pattern it's had since 2016, when I bled the lines after the first frost. At 6:40, the screen door creaked and Evans shuffled in, gym bag over his shoulder, hair smashed flat on one side. "You're up early," he said, as if I'd ever been anything else. "Old men keep banker's hours," I said. "Coffee." He poured and didn't meet my eyes. "Thanks." "Hey," I said, and he looked up enough to prove he heard me. "You and I can disagree about paint colors, politics, football teams. But about family we don't whisper," he flushed. Mara was venting. "She was planning," I said, my voice flat as a table. "And you were listening," he gripped the mug. "Can we please not? Not before Christmas. Christmas has been here the whole time," I said. "I'm going to see Ruth at 9. We'll be clean about whatever we do next." He nodded like a man signing for a package he didn't order. "Okay." After he left, I carried the trust binder into the living room like it was a child raised from a nap. I placed it on the coffee table and fetched the small tin box from the hall closet, the one that still smells like cedar from the pencil shavings I used to save in it. Inside, spare keys, my social security card, the backup USB with scanned receipts, and the last handwritten grocery list my wife made. Milk, bread, elbow macaroni, kisses. I put the USB in my pocket and left the list where it was, because some things don't need to be moved to be safe. The phone buzzed. Ruth 9 who's confirmed. Bring ID, bring proof of expenses. Don't rehearse the speech you think you'll need. We're not performing, we're documenting. I smiled despite myself. The best lawyers know when to put their palm on your heartbeat and say steady without saying it. I took a shower hotter than I could afford, steamed the mirror, shaved carefully around the scar on my jaw. I got in 94 when a line bucked in a windstorm, and I learned again that work respects no man who won't respect it first. I put on the blue wool sweater my wife bought me at Penny's, elbows patched with the kind of love that notices where you lean. I slid the mortgage statement and the furnace invoice into the manila folder, the tax receipt on top, then zipped the folder into my old canvas briefcase with the union patch half peeled off. I picked up my keys and paused, looking at the front door. Locks are facts. Feelings are weather. I checked the deadbolt, the knob, and the little brass chain that's never stopped a villain, but has shamed a lot of friends into knocking. I whispered to the house, not for mystic reasons, but because I've found that saying thank you out loud makes you act like you mean it. You've done your job, I told it. I'm going to do mine. On the way out, I stopped at Mrs. Alvarez's porch because she was already outside, sweeping a dusting of powder that didn't need sweeping. You look like court, she said, eyes flicking to the briefcase. Just church with paperwork, I said. Ruth at 9, she lowered her voice. My ring caught something yesterday. You'll want it. I'll text you the clip. Only if you're comfortable, I said. I'm comfortable when people are fair, she said. You've climbed my ladder more times than my son-in-law. I remember favors. The sky was that particular city gray that looks like it's been used before. I got into the truck, turned the key, and listened to the engine cough, catch, and settle. I checked the dashboard, where I keep the photographer's business card Cal once left after showing me a remodel on Main Street, available weekends, reasonable rates. I placed it beside the gear shift like a promise I was ready to keep. As I pulled away, I saw my granddaughter's popsicle stick house glinting on the mantel through the living room window. Red glitter in morning light. A child's version of shelter, simple, bright, no whispering. I gripped the wheel and let the ache wash over me without drowning. Collapse is a moment. Ruin is a choice. I chose to turn left toward Ruth's office, toward clean paperwork, and whatever future had my name on the deed. Ruth's office sat on the corner of 39th and Main, the same brick building it had been when my wife and I walked in back in 2018 with shaking hands and a half-written will. The carpet still smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, the fake ficus still leaned left, and the candy dish still overflowed with those strawberry-wrapped sweets nobody buys, but everyone eats. She greeted me like I'd never left. You kept the trust binder exactly as we drafted? She asked, flipping through the worn tabs. Her nail tapped the key page. Article 4, Trustee Powers. You can sell the property. They're guests here at your permission, not the other way around. Her voice was calm, but the words landed like iron. She slid across a form, notice to occupants of change in ownership. It's not to scare them, she explained. It's to make sure you're clean. Paper over panic, I nodded, tucking the form into the manila folder already fat with receipts. I don't want a war, I told her. You want boundaries, she said. Boundaries aren't wars. They're fences, and you've already been paying for the fence. At 9:42 a.m., we brought in a notary, $15 fee, her stamp crisp as new snow. Ruth drafted a retainer letter, 4 and 12. I signed with a pen that leaked blue ink on my thumb. Bring me your expenses list, she said. Mortgage, tax, furnace, it matters. By the time I left, the binder weighed less in my bag but more in my chest. I drove straight to Mildred's coffee house, A place where Union jackets still hang from chairs, though most of us don't climb poles anymore. Cal sat by the window, same denim jacket as always, only a realtor's pin where a safety clip used to shine. He grinned when he saw me. "You look like a man who needs a plan," he said. "You ever sell a house during Christmas?" I asked. "Plenty," he said, sipping black coffee. "Buyers love to swoop in when everyone else is napping. List right after Christmas. We'll make it clean, no fuss. Your house is honest. Honest sells." He ordered photos for Deck 21. Prepaid the photographer $275. "Pay me back at closing." He scribbled numbers on a napkin. List at $400,000. Expect $389,000 net after fees. Enough for me to buy a small condo near Luce Park, with enough left over to keep my independence padded. On the drive home, I stopped for light bulbs and vinegar to clean the windows. The act of scrubbing glass steadied me. Each streak gone was one less lie clinging to my walls. That evening, Mrs. Alvarez waved me over. She whispered like the porch light might overhear. "My ring caught her," she said. She pressed her phone into my hand. There Mara was on the screen, coat buttoned, voice low but sharp. "By New Year's, he'll be gone. A fresh start." The timestamp glared, Deck 18, 2:43 p.m., the same moment the oven timer had dinged. And proof wasn't just memory now, it was pixels, audio, data. "I didn't ask you for this," I told her. "You didn't have to," she said. "You're the only neighbor who ever fixed my porch light." Fair's fair. I saved the clip to my phone, thumb trembling. Betrayal had a sound file now. That night I spread everything on the dining table. Tax bills, furnace invoice, mortgage statement, the ring clip glowing on my phone screen. It looked less like evidence and more like a ledger of a life lived responsibly. I wrote on my yellow pad, Deck 26, list live. Deck 27, offer. Jan 23, close. A man can build his own calendar even when others are trying to erase him. I boxed up my wife's crystal ornaments, wrapping each in newspaper. My hands shook not from grief, but from a strange calm that comes when you know exactly what comes next. The whisper had told me I'd be gone after Christmas. But I was the one drawing the map now, and my ending would come written in ink, notarized and stapled to truth. If revenge is fuel, paperwork is the engine. By December 20th, my dining table looked less like a place to carve a turkey and more like a command post. The 2018 trust binder sat open beside stacks of receipts, $2,147 mortgage, $1,120 furnace repair, Nov 15 tax bill stamped paid. I laid each page flat, smoothed the edges and clipped them into neat packets. Not for drama, but because order is louder than... Shouting Cal showed up that afternoon with a tape measure and a grin that hadn't changed since we were both climbing poles in the 80s. He measured every wall while muttering, "Buyers notice inches the way wives notice perfume." He paused at the fireplace, where Mara liked to stage Instagram shots. "We'll list December 26th, he said, writing it down. "Private showings only. No open house circus. We'll let the buyers compete instead of you." Mara caught us mid-measurement, her nails painted a red, meant for holiday parties, not home maintenance. "Why's there a photographer coming?" she asked, squinting like she already knew. "Maintenance update," I said. Then I let silence do the heavy lifting. Silence has weight if you know how to place it. That night, at 8:17 p.m., I signed the listing agreement at the dining table while Cal slid papers across like cards in a poker game. "We'll price it just under comps," he said. "Invite a bidding war." He clipped the Supra lockbox to the back door, his phone buzzing as he registered my number for notifications. Every ping would mean another pair of shoes walking my floors, another chance at escape disguised as purchase. Ruth, ever the professional, emailed a letter addressed to Evan and Mara. The property is held in the Revocable Living Trust, dated March 12, 2018. The current trustee remains in sole control. Occupancy is by permission, revocable at will. No threats, no bile. Just law in black and white. I paid $64 at the hardware store the next morning for new door seals. Not because the house needed them, though the back door did draft, but because I wanted buyers to feel warmth when they crossed the threshold. You don't just sell wood and drywall, you sell the way air wraps around a body. On December 22nd, the photographer arrived. Mara hovered, all polite smiles and veiled daggers. "Hope he gets my good side," she joked. "Hope he gets the furnace," I said. "It's brand new. Buyers like clean heat." The camera clicked through living room, kitchen, bedrooms. Each flash caught proof of care. Polished baseboards, scrubbed windows. My wife's crystal ornaments boxed safely away, so nothing personal distracted from the bones of the place. After he left, Mara leaned against the counter. "You know, Evan and I have been talking about Brookside. Nicer schools, better market. This house. It's a little tired. This house kept you warm last winter when the power cut," I said. "Tired houses don't do that." Her smile faltered for half a second. Then she recovered, breezy again. "Well, we'll sort things out after the holidays." She floated off, but I noticed her glance at the folder marked December, trust actions on the dining table. She didn't touch it, but she wanted to. People always want what's labeled with dates. Dates are final. By Christmas Eve morning, the house smelled like lemon oil and turkey brine. I'd polished the banister until it shone, rehung the wreath my wife had chosen 10 years earlier, and boxed up anything too sentimental. I wasn't leaving under duress. I was transitioning under plan. Every document had a place on the table, and every receipt told a story, not of charity, but of ownership. I stacked the mortgage on top, furnace in the middle, tax bill at the bottom. A tower of proof. I didn't feel like a man plotting revenge. I felt like a man turning a key he'd held all along. And yet, somewhere down the hall, Mara's whisper scratched at the drywall like a mouse that wouldn't stop chewing. Christmas was coming, but so was the storm I'd chosen. Christmas Eve arrived, wrapped in the smell of rosemary and turkey fat, the house humming with that holiday hum that makes even silence sound full. The oven timer dinged at 2:10 p.m. Forks tapped against plates, glasses clinked. Family gathered like they were rehearsing togetherness, but under the table, betrayal still kicked its restless legs. Mara was in rare form, pouring wine into stemless glasses. Her phone buzzing every few minutes with Instagram notifications she pretended not to see. She turned to her sister, who dropped by early, and said loud enough for me to hear, "We should be in Brookside by March. Bigger yard, better schools. Just need to get the old situation handled first." She meant me. Reduced to a situation, I didn't slam a fist or shout. Instead, I walked into the kitchen, unfolded the $2,247 December mortgage statement, and set it on the counter, right where Mara usually staged her elaborate charcuterie boards. The blue circle I'd drawn around the due date caught the light like a halo. Evidence doesn't need to speak. It just needs to sit in the right spot. Evan caught sight of it, his face tightening the way a man's does when he sees both sides of a fence and knows he's standing on the wrong one. He didn't defend me. He didn't defend her. He just looked at the snow, piling against the back steps, as if white silence would solve it all. Mrs. Alvarez knocked at the door with a tray of tamales wrapped in foil. "Merry Christmas Eve," she said, eyes flicking between Mara and me. She set the tray down, then, as if by accident, added, "Houses keep memory better than people." Her words landed like a stone in a still pond. The ripple reached Evan first. Mara forced a laugh. "So true, so true. But sometimes you need to let go of old things, right?" She clinked her glass against her sister's, trying to wash over the moment. I carried the tamales to the table, thanked Alvarez, and sat. When the turkey was carved and passed, Mara held court about market heat and how fast properties were flipping in Kansas City. "Honestly, if you're not moving, you're falling behind." I chewed my food and let the words dissolve into noise. My fingers rested on the yellow pad tucked beneath the tablecloth. On it, in firm pencil strokes, Deck 26, list, Deck 27, offer, Jan 23, close. When the plates were cleared, I stepped out onto the porch, phone in hand, cold air stinging my cheeks. "I dialed Cal. Ready?" he asked. "Go live the morning after Christmas. 6 sharp? Done." Ruth already vetted the listing language. "Sale by trustee, as is trusted care." I looked back through the window, saw Mara laughing with her sister like she hadn't just sentenced me to irrelevance. "It doesn't have to sparkle," I told him. "It just has to stand straight." "It stands," he said. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I boxed my wife's photo, the one of her in the blue dress from 1998, and labeled it Keep Bedroom. I slid the box under my bed like a talisman against storms. I wasn't running from the house. I was preparing to leave on my own terms. The hall creaked. Mara's whisper carried through thin drywall, sharp and conspiratorial, like a mouse gnawing. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I left the light on. Let her know that whispers weren't invisible anymore. In my recliner, I stacked the documents once more. The paper fortress rising under the glow of the lamp. Mortgage, taxes, furnace, trust, proof stronger than any smile. There's a mercy in warning people without theatrics, in letting silence and preparation speak louder than rage. And by the time Christmas morning arrived, I wasn't thinking about gifts or eggnog. I was thinking about the 6 a.m. listing that would turn whispers into signatures. The day after Christmas dawned brittle and white, frost webbing across the truck windshield like a warning. At 6:07 a.m., Cal's text buzzed my phone. Listing is live. 2 showings booked by noon. By 3:30 p.m., a third was on the schedule. The Supra app on my phone pinged like a slot machine every time an agent checked in. Each vibration felt like a small hammer tapping nails into the coffin of Mara's certainty. She tried to mask her panic with performance. I found her in the living room, phone angled just so toward the morning light. "We're not moving," she announced to her Instagram followers, a steaming mug in hand. "We're just exploring options." Her tone was breezy, but her eyes cut to me like knives. I didn't answer. I brewed my coffee, slow, deliberate, and clipped the notice to occupants to the fridge with a Missouri-shaped magnet. Not a threat, just law in plain view. At 5:12 p.m., Cal called. His voice had that old job site grit. "Full price offer. $9,500 on earnest money. Quick close, January 23rd. He paused, letting the weight land. "These buyers don't play around." My phone chimed again as the email hit. Purchase agreement, disclosures, inspection addendum. I opened the PDF and saw it in writing. My trusted seller, my signature waiting. Mara snatched the printout off the counter and laughed, sharp and humorless. "This isn't valid. You can't sell our home." I looked at her squarely, no rise in my voice. "It was never yours? The trust owns it." "I'm the trustee." I slid the binder toward her, the 2018 date clear as day. Her jaw tightened. "Evan, say something." My son rubbed his forehead, shoulders sagging under weight he'd chosen when he married her. "He didn't meet my eyes. Maybe we should slow down," he muttered. "Slow down." Mara snapped. "He's sabotaging us. This is insane." I held up the signed pages. "It's already done." At 6:40, I signed. At 6:45, the buyer countersigned. The porch light came on at 6:46. That's the time it became permanent. Silence dropped heavy. Mara's eyes darted to the window where the for sale sign stood staked in frozen ground, rider still wrapped in plastic. At 7:10, Cal pulled into the drive with the sold rider in his back seat. He carried it in, still sheathed in cellophane. "We don't hang it yet," he said, laying it against the wall, "but it'll be ready." Mara kicked the chair leg, the sound cracking like a gunshot in the room. "This is our life. You can't just—" I cut her off, voice steady. "No, Mara, this is my life. This is my wife's trust. My pension. My payments. You built dreams on whispers. I built this roof with cash and contracts. Learn the difference." Evan turned to me then, face pale. "Dad, where will you go?" "Loose Park," I said simply. 1-bedroom condo. Window for morning light. It's already waiting." The clock ticked. The house felt taller. I slid the earnest money receipt across the table, its black ink undeniable. Mara stormed out, her heels striking like accusations on hardwood. Evan followed, but not quickly enough. I sipped my coffee, the steam warming my face. Revenge didn't taste sweet. It tasted like paper, ink, and a door clicking shut exactly the way it was designed to. When Cal left, the sold rider leaned against the wall like a prophecy. The house stood straighter in the silence, as though it knew its next chapter was secured. And me? I felt no thrill, just the steady heartbeat of justice dressed in receipts. The kind that whispers can't erase, because whispers fade. Contracts don't. 2 days after Christmas, the house still smelled of turkey bones, simmering down to broth, cinnamon crust flaking on the counter, tamales reheated in foil. Family drifted in for leftovers, the easy chatter of just one more plate covering the tension, like a thin blanket that doesn't reach your feet. I sat at the head of the table, not by demand, but by habit. On the chair beside me, instead of a coat, I placed a neat stack of papers. The executed purchase agreement, the earnest money receipt, and Ruth's letter, crisp with her signature. They were my shield and my sword, though I didn't raise them yet. At 2:30 p.m. the oven timer dinged to remind us the rolls were done. Funny how betrayal and bread can share a soundtrack. I stood, set the stack of papers in the center of the table, and spoke plain. "We close January 23rd, I said, sliding the documents across the wood. "I'll be moving to a condo near Luce Park. You'll have 30 days' notice from closing." The room stilled. Forks halfway to mouths, glasses paused mid-air. Even the rolls hissed in the oven, as if they wanted to hear. Mara's chair scraped back so hard it bit the hardwood. "You can't do this during Christmas," she spat. I met her eyes. "You started during Christmas." I pulled the mortgage statement from the stack and slid it toward Evan. The blue circle around $2,147 stared back at him like an accusation he didn't want to claim. "Every month since 2022, I said softly. "Paid from my pension." "Not yours?" Evan's jaw flexed. He looked at the number, then at me, then away, as if truth were too bright. Mara leaned forward, face flushed, voice rising. "You're ambushing us in front of family." "No," I said. "You ambushed me in my own kitchen with whispers." "This is me being clear." The tamales went cold as silence thickened. Evan tried again. "What are our options?" I held out my hand, open, steady. "You can purchase from the trust at the same terms within 72 hours. Otherwise, the sale stands." Cal, invited as a friend, cleared his throat. "The offer's clean. Full price, quick close. Hard to beat in this market." His voice carried the weight of a man who's seen too many closings to bother with spin. Mrs. Alvarez, coming by with another tray of tamales, walked right into the storm. She set the foil pan down, looked around, and asked, "What's going on?" "An ambush," Mara snapped, eyes darting at me. "An accounting," I corrected, lifting my phone and tapping play. The audio from the ring clip filled the room. Mara's voice, low and sharp, time-stamped Dec 18, 2:43 p.m. "We'll kick him out after Christmas." Fresh start. The oven dinged again. A second bell toll. Forks clinked. Evan rubbed his temples. Mara's face drained of color, but she pressed forward. "You recorded me?" "Not me," I said. "The neighborhood. Houses have ears when people don't." The room shrank, every breath visible in the winter air, leaking through seams. Mara tried again, her voice high and thin. "You can't just erase us." "I'm not erasing anyone," I said. "I'm moving on. The trust allows it. The law supports it. And my patience ended the moment you made me invisible." Evan finally spoke, his voice low. "We'll be gone by January 31st. Mara whipped toward him, eyes wide. "You can't..." But he didn't look at her. He looked at me, and for the first time in weeks, he held my gaze steady. The souled rider rested against the wall, still wrapped in cellophane, its bold red letters glaring like a truth waiting for daylight. Mara's eyes landed on it, desperate, as if refusing to acknowledge it might make it disappear. But paper doesn't vanish. Signatures don't melt. And whispers, once recorded, can't be taken back. I reached for my coffee, now lukewarm, and sipped. "This isn't revenge, Mara. This is boundaries. And boundaries come with dates and signatures." The gravy boat sat between us, absurd in its normalcy. I slid the stack of documents back into my folder, slow and deliberate. "You've got 72 hours to buy it back. Otherwise, the house is gone." "That's not threat. That's fact." The family dispersed in uneasy fragments. Chairs pushed back, dishes clattered into the sink. Nobody touched the rolls. When the last car pulled away and the house fell quiet, I stood in the living room, staring at the souled rider leaning against the wall. Tomorrow or the next, Cal would snap it onto the post. Mara could rail against the timing, the holiday, the unfairness, but the truth was already stapled to the page, and the truth doesn't need applause. It just needs daylight. That night, I lay in my bed with the box labeled "Keep Bedroom" beneath me, my wife's photo tucked safe inside. I thought about how betrayal whispers, but justice speaks in full voice, signed in ink. By the time I closed my eyes, I wasn't grieving the loss of a home. I was memorizing the sound of boundaries locking into place, because nothing is louder in a house that once echoed with whispers than silence filled with proof. The new year began with clipboards and flashlights instead of champagne. On January 2nd, the buyers scheduled their inspection, and I trailed behind the man in the Parker as he tested outlets, peered into the crawl space, and tapped the banister with his knuckles. "Loose handrail," he muttered, scribbling on his pad. "Cost to fix, $45. He pointed at the kitchen wall socket. "Needs a GFCI, $20, maybe 19 if you do it yourself." I smiled. "I'll handle it, not out of guilt, out of stewardship. A house deserves to be handed off like a clean handshake." When he left, I wrote the numbers on my yellow pad, slipped the receipt for the handrail fix into my December Trust Actions folder, and felt lighter. That same afternoon, Ruth filed the final trust minutes. "Trustee acts in best interest of settler." Her voice on the phone was calm as always. "And you are still here, which means you're still that interest. Don't let them bully you into thinking otherwise." By January 10th, boxes lined the living room, each one neatly labeled "Keep Bedroom, Keep Office, Donate, Garage." Cal lent me his truck, and Evan, silent, strained, helped me carry them down the icy steps. He didn't apologize, not then. He didn't need to. His silence was softer, less complicit. That was enough for now. On January 23rd, at 10:15 a.m., I sat in a title office under buzzing fluorescent lights while a stack of documents slid toward me. The escrow officer tapped each signature line with a manicured finger. I signed them all, my name steady in black ink. When the last page slid across, she smiled thinly and said, "That's it." She handed me a check, net proceeds $389,000 and change. I held it in my hand like a ticket punched to a new life. Paper doesn't usually weigh much. That check felt heavier than any steel wrench I ever carried on the line. Outside, the January wind bit my ears as Cal clapped me on the back. "One more step," he said. "Let's make it official." At noon, we drove back to the house. The for sale sign waited in the yard, its blank rider frame cold in the winter sun. Cal pulled the sold rider from his truck, tore away the cellophane, and climbed a small ladder. The snap of metal on wood rang sharp in the quiet neighborhood. Bold red letters screamed what whispers had tried to deny. "You sure?" Cal asked, stepping down. "I was sure the moment they made me invisible," I said. At 3 p.m., a locksmith arrived in a van with magnetic decals peeling at the edges. He charged $138, cash, for new locks on every door. He handed me 3 keys. I pocketed one, gave one to Ruth for her file, and kept the third taped in the trust binder. Control is security. Security is justice. Before I left, I wrote a move-out notice in neat block letters, dated January 31st, 5 p.m. I left it on the foyer table where Mara liked to set scented candles. Not cruel, not hidden, just documented, courteous, undeniable. When Mara tried one last time, cornering me in the hallway with her voice pitched high, brittle as glass, "We can talk to a lawyer. You can't just push us out like this." I handed her Ruth's email. 3 lines attached with the full trust. "The property belongs to the trust. The trustee has sole authority. This is not negotiable." Mara read it, her lips moving like a child forced through homework. Then she dropped the paper back onto the counter. "Law is not a feeling. It's a signature." As I walked out into the cold, key ring heavy in my pocket, I didn't feel victorious. I felt balanced. Justice wasn't about watching them squirm. It was about not squirming anymore myself. And when I looked back once more at the bold souled rider, gleaming red against white snow, I didn't see loss. I saw the boundary line written in letters, too big for whispers to erase. The first night in my new condo on Warnell Road was quieter than I expected. Too quiet. No furnace sighing, no familiar knock of the radiator from the old house, no creak in the upstairs hallway, where my wife used to pause with laundry in her arms. Just the hum of a refrigerator that wasn't yet filled, and the hollow echo of a man in one bedroom. I cracked the window anyway, let the January cold crawl in, because silence without wind feels like a trick. On the sill, I placed her photo, the one in the blue dress from 1998. The glass reflected the city lights, and for a moment it looked like she was standing in the skyline itself. I made tea with the one pan I'd unpacked and sat on the floor with the inspection report. I read it like a bedtime story, each note a reminder of the truths the old house had spoken. Loose handrail, GFCI outlet, replace filter in 30 days. Houses don't lie, people do. A house will tell you exactly where it hurts if you know how to listen. I thought about Evan then, about the boy who used to ride my shoulders while I climbed ladders, who once counted the screws in my tool belt like they were treasure. Now he was a man bent under someone else's ambition. People bend toward the heat they stand nearest. Sometimes that heat burns more than it warms. On January 30th, a text lit my phone. "We're moving. I'm sorry." His words were plain, thin, like handwriting smudged by rain. I stared at the screen a long while before replying with a number. My old buddy Carl's duplex on 39th and Bell. Cheaper rent than most. Evan didn't respond with excuses or defense. Just, "Thanks. Grief still lived with me, but it had better manners now." It no longer screamed. It nodded from the corner, letting me drink my tea in peace. I opened a notebook, wrote "Next" on the cover in block letters, and taped the stub from the $389,000 check inside the front page. Proof that the future was more than whispers. A ledger that began with me, not with what others tried to erase. On February 2nd, I walked past the old house. Snow had melted into slush along the curb. A toddler, new family's child, pressed his face to the window and waved. His hand left little fog prints on the glass. I waved back. No bitterness, no claim. The house had found new laughter to hold. Houses do move on, so do men. I stood at the edge of the yard, just for a moment, listening to the silence. No whispers there anymore, only the sound of wind through the gutters and a souled rider swaying a little, red letters catching the afternoon sun. I turned and walked back toward the park, my steps steady. Justice hadn't given me triumph. It had given me room to breathe. And sometimes that's the richest kind of victory there is. The condo didn't ask much of me, and that was its gift. No drafty windows to seal, no ancient furnace to nurse through cold snaps. Just clean walls, a single bedroom, and a kitchen that smelled faintly of fresh paint. I unpacked slow, one box at a time, as if I was relearning how to live without whispers in the hall. The first squeak came from the closet door. Habit took over. I fetched a screwdriver from the small toolkit I kept under the sink and tightened the hinge until the noise disappeared. It wasn't necessity. It was a ritual. Some men pray. I fix what squeaks. Within a week, neighbors began to appear. Mrs. Grant from across the hall knocked with a plate of lemon bars, explaining she once knew my wife's cousin who worked at the library. Connections bloom where you don't expect them. I took the plate, grateful, and thought maybe the world still has room for small kindnesses. I drove back to Mrs. Alvarez's place with a winter bulb wrapped in a paper bag. "For spring," I told her, handing it over. She hugged me hard, both feet planted like a tree that won't bow to wind. "You did right," she whispered. And for the first time in months, I believed her. On February 5th, Cal called me to breakfast. We met at a diner at 7:30 a.m., the kind with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tastes like workdays. He slid a stack of receipts across the table, photographer, lockbox, filing fees. "Settled to the penny," he said. "You did it clean." "Clean's the only way that lasts," I answered, stirring sugar into the bitter coffee. We didn't need to talk about Mara. We talked about old union jobs, about the men we buried, about the lines we climbed when we still believed steel poles reached the sky. On February 9th, I met Evan. He chose a cafe that served goat milk lattes, the kind Mara used to mock as pretentious. He looked thinner, lighter, like someone who'd been carrying a boulder and finally set it down. "I should have said something that day," he admitted, voice low. "You're saying it now," I told him. "That counts." We sat for a long while, talking about boundaries, as if they were tools we'd only just discovered. I didn't ask where Mara was. Some silences don't need filling. Before we parted, I slid an envelope across the table, $25,000, already earmarked with Ruth's help for a 529 plan for my granddaughter. "This isn't for either of you to fight over," I said. "This is hers, untouchable." Evan's eyes shone. He nodded, wordless, tucking the envelope into his jacket like a fragile bird. Legacy isn't always a house. It isn't always land or deeds or signatures. Legacy is how you leave a room, how you hand something forward without making it heavy. When I returned to the condo, I sat by the window with tea, watching the ducks at Loose Park argue with each other on the half-frozen pond. They squabbled, but none of them left. Families fracture. Familias min. The trick is knowing when to step back so the pond doesn't swallow you whole. For the first time in years, I felt not like a man defending ground, but like one planting new seed. Justice had come and gone. What remained was space. And in that space, there was enough peace to sleep through the night without listening for whispers. March came with a stubborn, cold snap, the kind that rattles window panes and makes you question whether spring will ever mean it this time. I was sorting mail one morning when a glossy flyer slipped out, bright as a snake in snow. "We specialize in holiday transitions," it read, all smiling agents with folded arms. The brokerage logo at the bottom. Mara's. I laughed at first, short and sharp, but the sound died in my throat. Irony wears heels, it doesn't tiptoe. She'd gone from whispering about evicting me at Christmas to marketing herself as the expert in moving families during the holidays. The audacity was so perfect, it almost deserved applause. Almost. I folded the flyer in half, slid it into my 2018 trust binder like a bookmark. Not out of spite, but as a reminder. Paper has a way of remembering the stories people try to rewrite. If one day my memory softens, I want the binder to testify it happened, it ended, and I walked away with the house still mine in principle, if not in walls. On March 14th, my phone buzzed. Evan again. This time no apology, no explanations, just a picture. My granddaughter sat at a small table, crayons scattered, her tongue poking out in concentration. She'd drawn a square house with a big red door. Above it, in shaky letters, she'd written, "Grandpa's." "She says this is your house," Evan texted. I stared at the picture until my eyes burned. My reply was simple. Tell her Grandpa's house is wherever Grandpa is. That night, I walked past the old place. New curtains hung in the front window, fresh mulch pressed into the flower beds. The house didn't wear my story anymore. It had shed me like a skin. No ghosts, no grudges, just new laughter waiting to carve its own marks into the baseboards. I stood for a long time at the yard signpost. The souled rider was gone now, leaving only an empty bracket and a nail hole darkened by winter rain. My breath clouded in front of me, white against the early spring dusk. "You didn't lose me," I whispered to the cold. "You gave me away." Then I turned toward Loose Park, where ducks argued on thawing water and children threw bread like peace treaties. My feet felt lighter. My pockets held no papers, no receipts, no keys. Just my hands finally free. Justice isn't loud. It isn't cruel. It doesn't stand on tables or wave banners. Justice is a man walking past the place that betrayed him, nodding once and not looking back twice, and that, I realized, was my final revenge. Not the sold sign, not the check, not even the trust binder is thick with proof. My revenge was silence. My revenge was peace.